ready?
Yeah.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, good morning. It's Thursday, my favorite day of the week. I'm Ross. Thanks so much for spending a little time with me. Oh, I need to get my show text thing going here, so you can text me at 57739 at any point during the show. And if you text me after the show, usually I'll get it the next morning. But you can text me at any point during the show. And, 57739, include the word Ross, please, if you want to get in touch with me. Yesterday, we had the first half, or maybe what was more than the first half, of the House managers who were effectively the prosecutors in this second impeachment of Donald Trump make their case. The defense team, Trump's attorneys, will likely start tomorrow, and they would have up to 16 hours over 2 days, although I doubt they will take all 16 hours. And shortly after their case is presented, the Senate can debate for a little while. I don't have the exact number of hours in front of me, but it's certainly not unlimited. It's quite a limited period of time. And I would expect that we would have the vote that will almost certainly acquit President Trump. I expect we would have that vote Sunday, Monday, in that time frame. So we'll see. A couple things I want to say about the trial so far, and keeping in mind that except for that disastrous performance by the Trump attorneys day before yesterday, we really haven't heard the defense side. We've only heard the prosecution. When you only hear one side of a case, it's very easy to be moved by it, and it's quite possible, and it happens a lot in trials, and it happens a lot in television versions of trials that you've all seen, that we've all seen, that you hear part of a case that sounds devastating, and then you hear the other side, and you think to yourself, well, all right, now I'm not so sure anymore. Now, this is an unusual situation in that, first of all, I think hardly anybody's minds are being changed because so much of what's going on is politics rather than, actual open, honest thought about what happened. But also, so much of what happened, not all, but so much was already known and already seen and heard by all of us on that day and the days after. And one of the things that I've found interesting is that I thought this impeachment trial would be mostly fairly dull, and the Democrats, the House managers, have done a pretty good job bringing new information in. Now, for sure, a lot of this is intended just for its drama, but it works. I mean, remember when you're presenting in a court of law, not that I'm a lawyer, but when you're presenting in a court of law, it goes without saying that you want to bring whatever kind of case you can that will help your side win. And oftentimes that involves bringing some emotion into the situation and trying to stir a level of emotion in the jurors. And that's a perfectly fine tactic for an attorney to do as long as you're not lying to do it. And that's what the Democrats are doing. And remember, they know that they're not going to get even to double digits in the number of Republicans who are going to vote to convict. I still think the number will be around 5. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe one or two of the people who voted that the trial is constitutional might not vote to convict. And maybe one, I doubt it would be more than one, of the Republican senators who voted that the trial is not constitutional will vote to convict. So I think we had 6 who voted in the last couple of days that the trial was constitutional. I don't know that all 6 of them will vote to convict. So if you lose one of them and pick up one from somewhere else, you're probably somewhere around 6. They need 17. So Democrats know that. They know that the president is not going to be convicted. And so their message is as much to the voting public as it is to the U.S. senators. It's to the voting public, even though we're long before the next election. Time does seem to go fast these days. So it's to the voting public about just trying to tarnish Republicans, to make to attach the stink of January 6th to Republicans more generally is part of what they're wanting to do here, including they will try to do that with every senator who votes to acquit. I don't know that it'll work. The other thing that they're doing is they are raising a lot of money. Both sides are raising money, actually. Both sides are raising a lot of money off this impeachment. Go into their bases, and Democrats are saying, look what Trump did, and here we are trying to hold him to account. And Republicans are saying, look at this in just outrageous political theater and an unconstitutional post-office holding impeachment that we shouldn't be having anyway. And there are a lot of arguments going around on the conservative side of social media and politics, and things like, well, if the Chief Justice isn't presiding, then it's an unconstitutional procedure. And I'm not going to get into debating all that right now. So the Democrats brought in a lot of new information in terms of new audio and video. And I'm not going to play a lot of it for you. I just got one thing that I want to share because, look, when you have this kind of massive, violent event, there's going to be a lot of emotional audio and video, right? They played some previously unheard audio of Capitol Police, kind of yelling into the microphone. They're using, what was the word? Armaments? No. Gosh, they didn't say guns, but it was a synonym for weapons. It wasn't weapons either. But they're using them against us. The cop says they're using them against us. And crowd had bear spray and things like that. And then you hear a police officer yelling, "We've lost the line. Everybody retreat to the upper balcony. We've lost the line. We've lost the line. We've lost the line." It's pretty intense. And the officer's voice is much more intense than mine was there. He's somewhere, but you can hear intensity, anger, and even a little fear in his voice. And who wouldn't? So they played all that. It's very dramatic. And they played lots of stuff that happened in the crowd and in the building and the rioters getting in. There was some previously unseen footage. So we all saw some of this stuff with Officer Goodman leading the rioters away from the Senate, which was quite incredible. Yesterday they showed some previously unseen footage that I think was maybe part of that whole same thing, but an angle that hadn't been shown before from a security camera, where as Goodman was coming up, I think I have it right that this was still the Goodman piece, but coming up through the hallway with rioters coming behind him, coming the other way towards him was Senator Mitt Romney. I don't know where Romney was going, but Romney was going towards Goodman and therefore toward the rioters, and they wave at Romney, "No, go back, go back." And then Romney turns around and starts literally running the other direction. The cop must have said something that made him move really fast. And Romney said, "Until I just saw that, I had no idea that I was that close to the rioters." And then there was also some video of Mike Pence, who they were talking about as, less than 100 feet away. There was one piece of audio, I guess, or maybe two pieces on the same topic that came up back to back in the hearing yesterday that really stuck with me as some of what happened that day that really bothered me a lot. Obviously, all the violence and breaking into the Capitol and people dying and all that, obviously that bothers me a lot. But just backing away from that for a second, conceptually, one of the things that bothered me so much was the way former President Trump treated and talked about former Vice President Mike Pence. So Pence was as loyal as the day is long throughout the entire Trump presidency and never criticized Trump even for things that other Republicans were critical of. And he just stuck by his side all the time. And also, don't forget, Mike Pence is arguably a key reason that President Trump won the 2016 election, because Mike Pence gave Donald Trump credibility with evangelical Christians. So Trump would never have been president, in my opinion, without Pence. And that morning and previously, President Trump spent a lot of time basically saying that Mike Pence was failing the country and going down the road of talking about Mike Pence as something like a traitor or committing treason or not doing what he should do in his role presiding over the congressional count of the Electoral College votes. Now, of course, there was no constitutional role for Congress to refuse to count or certify. They don't certify. There is no congressional role for Congress to refuse to count properly certified votes. So all that stuff that Hawley and Cruz were doing and all the stuff that President Trump wanted these people to do was unconstitutional. Mike Pence knew it. Mike Pence wrote a letter to the president about it, saying, "This is my duty. I don't have the authority that you want me to exercise. I can't do those things because it's not legal for me to do the things you want me to do." And President Trump just kept bad-mouthing Mike Pence. And then during the insurrection, when everybody knew Mike Pence was in the building and potentially in trouble, President Trump didn't seem to lift a finger. And then there's news stories out there about how angry that, I don't know about Pence personally, but the whole team around him was, that Pence eventually got evacuated. He was moved to some bunker somewhere by the Secret Service, and Trump never got in touch with them to find out if they were okay, how you doing, how you feeling. And a lot of the Pence team was really upset, and I don't blame them. I would be too. So in the audio yesterday, the one thing that I heard that really bothered me a lot, and I'd heard just a little of it before, but not quite like this, was in the crowd, the rioters, and what they were saying about Mike Pence. This short clip starts with the House manager who was presenting this part of their case introducing the clip.
You can hear the security alarm from the door in the background, and you can hear the mob calling for the death of the Vice President of the United States.
So in one place, you got people yelling, "Hang Mike Pence," and they erected a scaffold just outside with a noose hanging from it. And then somewhere else in the crowd, someone's yelling through a bullhorn or speaker, "Bring out Mike Pence," and the crowd around him is yelling, "Bring him out." Now, again, the other thing I want to point out, as emotional as this stuff is, very little of what the House managers presented yesterday, very little was tying the events to Trump. It was intended to stir the emotions of the senators who lived through all that and perhaps of voters who are watching it. But the case is not, were there a bunch of terrible people who stormed the White House, right? That's not what this case is. The case is, was there a terrible event that was incited by the President of the United States? And they spent very little time on that. And I think some people, especially on the Republican side, Lindsey Graham made some comments along these lines, saw yesterday's presentation by the House managers as overly emotional, overly dramatic, and overly and obviously designed just to be about making people relive a terrible day without actually, no one's denying that it was a terrible day. Well, nobody who matters is denying it, without actually focusing on the case, which is President Trump responsible for it? So we'll see whether the House managers do more of that today, try to tie this more to President Trump. I mean, I think that part of the case is probably fairly obvious, but again, the House managers have brought a lot of audio and video and some information that we didn't have before, and let people kind of know that there's more to it. Oh, speaking of more to it, one other thing that I want to mention. We all heard immediately after this January 6th attack that Officer Brian Sicknick died from blunt force trauma from being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. Everybody reported it. I mentioned it on the air because, you know, who wouldn't when one major media outlet after another all reported the same thing. Hit in the head with a fire extinguisher and died. It appears now that that might not be the case. And we don't have a firm answer on it yet, but stories are coming out from sources that appear to be anonymous but well-placed, that Sicknick did not die of blunt force trauma, that there is not evidence of blunt force trauma to him. And I heard one report last night, it might have been on Tucker Carlson's show, I don't remember for sure, that he actually had a phone call with a brother or spouse, something, hours after the attack, saying that he had been bear sprayed and maybe injured slightly, I don't even know, but that he was okay. I would like to know what really happened. It doesn't change how terrible the event was of that day, but it sure does add to this feeling that we cannot trust the media. We'll be back.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver. Now, Impact Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
For the Betfred Sports Traffic Center, good